questions that are being asked, I'd like to mostly address, so this is my preference, is questions that affect how you walk. Questions about living this out. What he's always told me is, tell them that if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be where they're supposed to be. But you need a teacher to teach you what it is you need to be doing.
Ephesians 4, verse 25. Is it okay to be angry at teaching or comments that twist scriptures?
Okay, 4:25. Therefore, having put off the false, speak truth, each one to his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Is it okay to be angry at teaching or comments that twist scriptures? Why would you be angry? Okay. Why does anything anybody else does actually bother you? Unless they're actually doing it to you, like literally like coming over and smacking you or spitting on you or some other thing. Why do you care what people think? Why do you care what people say? Why does that stuff affect you in such a strong emotional way? Is it okay to be angry at wrong teachings? Why would you be angry at wrong teachings? So, listen, there's a million wrong teachings on the internet every day. So what do? You ignore them. You don't watch them. And if you watch them, you realize this is wrong, and you turn it off and you watch something else. Why would you let it make you angry? Okay? Or comments that twist scripture. Okay, let me ask this question. Let's kind of move it to the right direction. Wrong teaching and comments that twist scripture. Why are people doing that? What is the motivator behind that? 99% of the time, okay? Why are people doing wrong teaching? Teaching that twist scripture. Is it because they know they're twisting scripture? 99% of the time, I would say no. More than 99% of the time, almost perfect 100%. They think they are rightly dividing the word. So why would you be angry at them? And the comments that are made are the same thing. They're making comments that twist scripture. Again, because they believe they're right. Why would you be angry with someone who thinks they're right when they're wrong? I don't understand why you'd be angry with that. By the way, weren't you them a few years back? Maybe not even so long ago, when you thought you were right but you were wrong? So the problem is in you. Why are you allowing whatever they do to cause you to feel this negative feeling, to disturb your shalom and generate this negative thing going on in you? Well, it makes me so mad when I see, why? Why does it make you mad? I'll tell you why. Because you have decided that you are the personal guardian or representative of the Almighty, okay? And that you need to do something about it. He doesn't need you to defend him. Okay? Look, I'm not trying to get in trouble with all the blue collar personality people. Okay? But this is your problem. This is not a white, yellow, or red problem. This is a blue problem. You guys have to find a way to have peace when the world that you live in is doing things that are not right. Because in your sort of personality style, nothing should be done that's not right. So therefore, somebody should make it stop. Somebody should fix it, somebody should correct it and make it stop. Well, Yahweh will do it whenever he feels like it, and it's not your problem. You need to learn how to, look, I use this as a phrase, but I mean it not as a joke. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. You know the teaching I did, peace in the world, not his. You need to have peace in the world, not yours. Okay? If you own this, if you have a blue personality, you need to find a way to have peace in a world not yours. It's his, not yours. Okay? Now, when I say it's not his, I mean he's allowed us to do whatever we want, so that's why it's kind of crazy. But ultimately, whatever gets fixed, it's when he decides, right? The responsibility for all of this, he causes or allows. So all the nonsense, he's allowing it, at least. Okay? And you have to have peace. The problem is you get angry with teachings and comments that twist Scripture because you're taking it personally. Because that shouldn't be allowed in your world. It's not your world. You get to live in it, but it's not your world. You don't have authority over it. So why does it bother you? Okay? Oh, here's a great, I said this to somebody recently. I'm going to use this as a great analogy for you. Especially for all of you ladies. Ladies are mostly blue anyway, with your husbands and everything else. Reflection. Okay, because people think, well, what that person's doing is reflecting on Yahweh. It's reflecting on this. It's reflecting on that. Okay, right? Isn't that why you're? Oh, I'm mad because they're shaming Yahweh. They're embarrassing Yahweh. They're doing whatever. We don't reflect. Okay, listen now. We don't reflect. What's done from the above doesn't reflect on you. You reflect on him. Okay. And so when these people are doing, it only reflects on them. It doesn't reflect on him. It's not embarrassing him. It's embarrassing them. Okay? We don't reflect up. So if you're the husband and you do something, your wife gets all mad because it reflects on her. No, it doesn't. What you do reflects on your husband, not the other way around. So what these people do reflects them. It shows themselves, and Yahweh will have to deal with it. It's not the other way. It doesn't affect Yahweh. Just like, do you understand how I'm trying to explain this? It's them doing what they do, and it reflects on them, and the one above them decides what to do with it. See, but you get mad when the one above you does stuff because it makes you're embarrassed. Well, I can't believe you do that all the time in public, and don't you're embarrassing me. No, I'm embarrassing myself if you're under me. Okay? Now, if you do something, you might embarrass me, but that's between you and me, not between somebody else who saw you do it and me. Are we getting this? You watch somebody do something, it embarrasses them before the Almighty. You don't have to worry about it. Why are you inserting yourself? See, I know people say, why do you pick on the blue side so much? You guys need to understand, this is group therapy for you. I'm not picking on you. Your personality is the only one that inserts itself. Okay? A red doesn't walk in and insert itself. It walks in. If you're going to let it, it's going to take control and do things. If you're not, it's going to go find someplace else to do something. The blue is going to insert itself. The white and the yellow could care less, okay? The white doesn't want to insert into anything. The white wants to be left alone. And the yellow, if it's not fun, is going to go off somewhere else. All right? But imposing yourself is a blue thing. And that's why a lot of you have a real hard time having shalom, having peace, having joy as much as you could. Because everything around you in this world is not perfect. Everything around you is jacked up, messed up, and everything else, and it drives you crazy. Because you walk around all the time going, that's not right. Why is that happening? That shouldn't be. That's wrong. That's the way the whole world is. You're going to have to deal with it. By recognizing it's not your problem. Okay, it's not your problem. Yahweh's problem. Yes, these people, what they do reflects on them. It's embarrassing. Especially if they claim to be his, it's embarrassing. But that embarrassment to be dealt with is dealt with the one above them. Okay? And so let's be understanding that. Yes, what you do reflects on the one above you, but it's between you and the one above you. Okay? So, because the lady will say, well, people are looking at you like you're an idiot because of what you did in public. Well, that's okay. They're looking at me like I'm an idiot. They're not looking at you like you're an idiot for being with me. Okay? I'm just saying. Very few conversations I've ever had about anybody doing anything foolish, dumb, embarrassing, whatever else, do I look at the spouse and say, I can't believe they're married to that person. Okay? I look at that person like, that was dumb. Okay? And so let's not go and take these things in other directions, okay? So no, it is not okay to be angry about something that has nothing to do with you. Why would you get angry about anything that has nothing to do with you? See, I've told this, and again, we have to reset, I guess. For all of you, I don't care what color you are, but mostly it's a blue problem. Just because you're aware of something doesn't mean it's your business. Okay? please don't be offended just because I picked on the color and everything else. Own if this is you. What you're doing, whoever you are, whatever personality you have, just because you see, hear, read, find out about, and become aware of something doesn't make it yours to deal with. I'm setting a lot of you free if you will embrace this. You need to go with, what did I always call it? What did I always say when you see something and you have to decide what to do with it? That's interesting. Okay? You're aware of something, you go, that's interesting. I wonder if I should be involved in that. So you guys remember I've taught that. But you don't do it. The first reaction should be, oh, that person just twisted the scriptures. That's interesting. I wonder if that's something I should be involved in. And the answer 99% of the time should be no. No. Look, I see this happening all the time. I'm a teacher. I have a certain role to play. But if the people doing this are not people I've been given to teach, I don't post. I don't post on anybody's foolishness. I don't comment on anybody's videos that are on YouTube that I think are twisting the scripture. I don't thumbs down. I don't do anything. It's not mine to deal with. They're doing what? They're embarrassing themselves before whoever's above them. And so therefore, that's who will deal with it. I correct you guys when you're reflecting on me. You post in my group, you post in some place, you claim to be representing me, then you become my problem. Then I say to you, come here, you need to take that post down. Oh, but I posted it on my own private page. That's all well and good. Go somewhere else, and then you can post on your own private page. You're part of this group, then you got to be careful what you post on your own private page that reflects on this group. Okay? And I'm not just talking about your personal stuff. I'm talking about things that have to do with, those little sideways, cutesy little ways of attacking leadership and things like that. And people are going to wonder, are you attacking this leadership? It's don't give people that opportunity to guess that might be what you're doing. Meanwhile, you're talking about some boss at work or something. They don't know that unless you write specifically what you're talking about. Oh, but you don't want to be that open about it because you want to be all cute and hint at it. Look, if you can't say it straight, don't say it. How's that? All right? If you need to be cute because you don't want to get in trouble, but you want to make a point and you're hoping that the person will hear it, then don't write it. All right? You hear me on the microphone. If I'm going to call somebody out, I'll call them out. All right? We're not going to get cute about it. I'll just call you out. Because there's no point to that. Oh, I wonder who he's talking about. You're going to post, nobody should wonder what you're talking about. Oh, but I don't want to do that. Well, then don't do it. If you don't want to be that straight, you don't want to call anybody out directly, which really you shouldn't. There's no reason. Matthew 18, go to your brother. This person's not my brother. Well, then it's your boss or whatever it is. Then just deal with it or change jobs. But going out and trying to shame somebody in public is not what we should be doing. There's no reason to do that. It's wrong, okay? So again, to the answer here, let's not be angry about what other people are doing, especially if it's not being done, or unless it's being, even when it's being done to you, you don't have to get angry. But the only time you should have any anger is if something's actually being done directly to you, okay? And even then you shouldn't be angry. We should find a way to handle that. But certainly never if something's being done around you and to other people, that should not anger you. Oh, I just get so angry when I see all these horrible things happening in the world. Why do you get angry? Are you having a problem with the fact that Yahweh's allowing it? If he's allowing it, why are you upset about it? The only person who could do anything about it is okay with it where it is right now. Not okay like he's for it, but as allowing it. Somehow it fits into what needs to happen. It is what it is. All right? Next question.
From Anna Kaufman, what does it mean to be over-righteous in Ecclesiastes 7, chapter 7, verse 16?
In which one? Ecclesiastes 7:16.
7:16.
All right, let me get to that real quickly here. Do not be over-righteous, neither be over-wise. Why destroy yourself? Okay, so what is the main theme that Shlomo is talking about, Solomon's talking about in Ecclesiastes. The main theme to me is most of what we do, coming from our own sort of point of view, is wind. It's vapor. It's futility. It's nonsense. Matter of fact, he says it in verse 15. He says, "I have seen it all in my days of futility." All right? There is a righteous one perishing in his righteousness. There is a wrong one living long in his evil. So he says, don't be over-righteous, neither be over-wise. I think there he's trying to say, don't be self-righteous and think you're so smart in terms of what you think it's going to accomplish, and this and that. He says wise people, righteous people die young sometimes, and evil people seem to live long, and that's very confusing even to some of the prophets. It's like, why do the evil seem to prosper? Why do the sinners seem to prosper and the righteous die? Well, Yahweh's allowing the evil people to just exist and time and chance happen to them, and the righteous are being put through some tests to see where they're at. It's a different standard being held here, okay, based on who he's working with at the time. Doesn't mean the evil are getting away with anything, because they're not, okay? So I think what he's talking about here is, do not be wrong over much, do not be a fool, why die before your time? It is good that you should take a hold of this, and also not withhold your hand from the other. So he's saying it's not that you shouldn't be doing right and doing righteous, just be careful how you think about it. You're thinking, oh, I'm so righteous, it's going to get me this, that, or the other thing. No, you just do what's right because it's right. Don't worry about what it gets you in the now. And he's talking about the now, not ultimately. In the now, righteous people sometimes die young. Evil people sometimes live a long time. That's in the now. That's not in the ultimate of all of this. So I think that's what he's talking about there, Anna, okay?
Okay, from Judith York in Numbers 19:13, touching the dead makes you unclean for 7 days. John 11:43 and 44, did Yeshua become unclean when he raised Lazarus?
All right. The problem here is understanding clean and unclean, okay? Clean and unclean doesn't mean that Yeshua sinned, which is kind of where the question, I think, is coming from. Yeshua was unclean a lot. He came into contact with unclean things on a regular basis. And so everybody, by the way, back then was unclean a lot. Unclean was a ritual status based on the rules like you read in Leviticus 19. And so that simply would have meant that he couldn't do certain things until he went through a certain process. And so, yes, he was unclean often when he interacted with people that would have made him unclean, or if he interacted with something there's lots of different ways you can become unclean as opposed to in sin, all right? Unclean doesn't mean you're in sin. Because hopefully that answered that question, all right?
Okay, from Christy Sue, is haSatan allowed or able to create? She was thinking of ticks and other nasty creatures that don't make sense to her.
Okay. Look, this is his world right now, but it's limited to whatever the Father allows him to do, okay? We create in some ways. I mean, I certainly can understand that, we've created all kinds of nasty things on this planet, okay? Lots of man-made little viruses, like recently. Okay, so, all right? So no surprise that some of the other nasty things could be something that haSatan had brought in place. I won't go and name and say, yes, it's ticks and other nasty creatures, but it's certainly not outside of the realm of possibility that he could create some nasty things, okay? But remember, if he did, it's only because Abba allowed him to. And that's always the thing that has to be foremost in our thoughts, is that these things can only be if he allows them to be, okay? Well, I found the question that I wanted to answer from before. Okay, so I knew I was kind of hitting on it about the breach of relationship, but I just want to, the rest of the question is in the rest of the question here. So it says, Shalom Rabbi, the question I have is that has come about in the teaching about sin, and the teaching you say that someone not covenanted to Yahweh cannot sin against him, come into breach of relationship. So by implication, they can only sin against other people, not against Abba. So when it comes to judgment day, on what will they be judged if the Torah is not applicable to them, as they are not in covenant with Abba? Father, please help me with this one. Okay, so this is a really good question for someone, obviously, who has not yet listened to enough teachings to understand the millennium and the kingdom and things that so. Nobody will be on judgment day who hasn't had a choice. Okay? Nobody will be on judgment day judged who had not been offered the choice of Torah versus not being in covenant. Okay? Choose life, choose death. And so everyone on Judgment Day is going to be judged on their choice, not just whether or not to go in the Torah direction, but if they actually decided to keep it, or they did their own twisted version of it, okay? So the false premise is the idea that, well, it's not really sin the way we would normally think of it against Abba if you're not in covenant. That's true. But on Judgment Day, all people by Judgment Day will have been given a choice. All right? So they will all have chosen to keep or breach that relationship. Do not think that there's some sort of a dichotomy here or some sort of us and them separate thing. All get the same thing. He judges with fairness. So everyone gets the opportunity to choose life, and everyone then makes their decision and will be judged on their decision. Now, not everybody gets that choice right now. That's where the confusion is. So whoever wrote this question, this was Nico Johan Verwey, okay? I probably didn't pronounce it right. But anyway, I'll put a sort of a link, hopefully, to where I answered this question. But Nico, the understanding, you have to go to the Millennium and Kingdom teaching, because that's where you'll see and understand that everybody gets their one opportunity. And then there's the judgment, okay? But you have to get your opportunity. So all these people that have lived that didn't have an opportunity, they're not going to Judgment Day yet. They have to get the opportunity. They have to choose, because it's your choice that's what matters, okay? Because he's not a respecter of person, so he's not going to just say, all these people that never knew, well, it's too bad on them. They're doomed, okay? Nor are they just going to be like, well, you didn't know, but you were kind of a nice person, so you get in. That doesn't work either. Everybody has to jump through the same hoops, meet the same standards and the same criteria, okay? This is all merit-based. You're going to merit forever, okay? No, you didn't merit Yeshua dying for you. That was something they chose to do, which makes forever possible. But whether you get it or not, you're going to merit it, okay? And I know people hate that idea that it's a merit-based system, but it is. You're going to merit forever, or you're not. All right, so that answered that question. Okay, next.
Okay, from line upon line for today, it says, Rabbi, Proverbs 7, verse 10, 1 Peter 3:3, and 1 Timothy 2:9. What's the takeaway, and how do our women avoid this in society today?
Well, we're going to do 1 Peter next teaching, 1 Peter 3, but let me just look and see where that fits into this. But we are going to do that in the next role of men and women. Okay, so we're talking about how women dress. Okay, and then of course in 1 Timothy 2. All right, so Proverbs is talking about, and look, a woman met him dressed like a whore with a hidden heart. Okay, that's not necessarily about the clothing, because everything in Proverbs is about the metaphor of the temptations of desire and things that would lead you astray from sin, from Torah. And then the second one was in 1 Peter 3:3, which is your adornment should be not outward, arranging the hair, etc., but the hidden man of the heart with the incorruptible ornament of meek, peaceable spirit, etc. And then 1 Timothy 2:9 was likewise that women dress themselves becomingly. Okay, so how do our women avoid this in society today? Look, you should understand that your dress, let's make this real simple. And again, Paul was making it based on the society he lived in, all right? Because right now, we do not have the clarity that they had, that if you were a whore, you dressed a certain way. Because we've got people dressing all kinds of way who are absolutely not whores, but they dress and look like what somebody might think is that, okay? So we can't just look at somebody and know what they actually do for a living just by the way they dress. But that's not the point. The point is, ladies, if you are dressing in a manner that would be distracting to a man, okay, distracting to a man. So like, in other words, you walk by and the man goes, ooh, and starts following, you know. And he's going to think of you in a sexual way because you're eliciting that by your clothing choice, then you've made a bad or poor clothing choice. All right? Now, the reason I say it this way is because it's cultural. Because different things attract different people culturally and are considered that way. So I'm not saying that your dress has to be down to the floor because somebody may get into some sort of ecstasy state because they saw your ankle, okay? There are people that think that, oh my gosh, you showed your ankle, okay? But I shouldn't probably get to maybe guess what color your underwear is, okay? Because it's so high up that if you move just right, I'll know. That's a different problem. So there's a right spot between those two, okay? A lot closer to the ankle. All right? Because it should not be something that has the man thinking about you in that way. And by the way, we know that there are basically two areas of the body that do that, the chest area and the lower area. Those are the two. And so you can wear clothing that draws attention to those two areas or not. And so that's basically the point, okay? And women can be really, not you guys, I'm talking about from my experience in the world, women can be really stupid. Let me explain what I mean. Don't get all offended. I worked in this one company, it was the insurance company I worked at back in late 80s, early 90s. And there was a young lady that worked there, probably early 20s, and she would, on a regular basis, wear like short skirts where you could almost tell the underwear color, right? And she had her legs all showing and everything else. And guys, of course, would like ogle her as she would go, across the room. And then she would get mad. I said, what are you mad about? This is what you wanted. You dressed to make them do that. If you didn't want them looking at your legs, why would you show them like you did? There wasn't almost an inch of leg not showing. And now you're mad because the guys are going, ooh, look, great legs. Was that not the reaction you were going for? From the other side of it, the ladies don't want to show their legs, but they got all of their goods up front showing. All right. So where do you think the guy's eyes are going to go? And the ladies' eyes too. Everybody's eyes are going to go there. That's just showing it off. It's distracting. Okay? So let's not do that. Ladies, you know that clothing will draw attention to or from anything. If you're trying to hide a part of you that's not so good, you do other things to draw attention somewhere else. Okay? We know that, look, we don't do this much anymore, but back in the 80s when people wore shoulder pads, do you know why the ladies wore the dresses with the shoulder pads? Because it took away anybody's eyes from their wide hips. Okay, narrow shoulders and wide hips didn't look so good, but you put shoulder pads out, now you're more balanced. It was simply an aesthetic thing to do to draw the attention away from. Ladies with broader shoulders didn't get the dresses with the outfits with the shoulder pads because they were more balanced with that. Okay? And so, ladies, understand where you live, how that culture is, and what is appropriate to not bring undesired attention or distraction to the men. Okay? It's not complicated. Okay, so I'm not going to give you like specifics. Your dress should be this long and whatever covering of your shoulder, your arm, or whatever it is. There's stuff that's done in a very tasteful, classy enough way, and other stuff that basically makes you look very sleazy, so to speak, based on your culture. And you should know that and be aware of that. And if you're not, that's where you need to find the older women in the walk and say, is this appropriate? Can you help me with my appropriateness? all right? And you should be able to redirect so that when someone looks at you, you know what they should see? How about not having anything going on in your clothing so they actually look at your face? All right? How about that? Because anything that's uncovered too much is going to draw the eyes away from your face. And then that's really where the problem becomes. And that's a temptation distraction for a man. Not that he's going to actually physically do something, but his mind is going to go in a place that it doesn't need to go. Because by the way, ladies, every guy, you need to know this, every guy will complete the process of taking the clothes off in his head. We will. If you're going to show some of it, we're going to picture what the rest of it looks like. Cover it all up, we're not doing that. But if you're going to give us this, if you're going to give us a head start, some of you guys don't even try to deny it. All right? If you give us a head start, we're finishing it up in our head. So don't do that. That's not fair to us. And by the way, don't get mad at your husband or whatever. Men can't help this, which is why you should be respectful and not put us in that place. All right? I'm just making that point. Okay? Look, I remember I was at a bat mitzvah, and my cousin's bat mitzvah, and there was a girl up there who had just had an enhancement done. And she was making sure everybody could see it. And everybody, male or female, saw it. Because you can't help but have your eyes be drawn to when stuff is exposed. The ladies too, everybody was looking. That's what she wanted. So you need to be aware. And don't get all mad because your husband happens to look. Now, if he's just goggling, okay, that's a problem. But if a girl walks by, he's going to notice just like you're going to notice. And don't act like you didn't notice it either. Okay? You'll notice probably before he did. That's just being a guy. All right? But ladies, why would you make it harder for us? Why would you make it more challenging and difficult for us? And that's kind of what's going on here. Ladies, don't do that. Let your beauty come out from your spirit, your behavior, your Torah observance, your character, okay? Not just from the physical body, all right? That doesn't mean you can't dress nice. You can dress nice without doing all of that, okay? Absolutely. You know what? You should look in the mirror and say, in wearing this, where's somebody's eyes going to go first? Are they going to just take the whole thing in because it's nicely balanced without anything? Then that's great. Is it going to be able to go to my face? But if it's drawn to something, that could be a problem, all right? That could be a problem. And just be honest about it. Or ask a friend and say, look, where do your eyes go when you first see me? Is something uncovered that really needs to be covered better? And do that. You can do that. And that could possibly help, all right? Because that's how we are designed. So you need to know that we can't help that, so why don't you help us out? And that's kind of what Paul's talking about in the Proverbs and all the other places he's talking about. Ladies, don't put the men in such a challenging position, okay? Be respectful of that, all right? All right, next question.
Okay, from J. Dolphin, says, hi, Rabbi, how often do we do it says Lord's table, and they had followed up later on about, do we just do it during the feast, during Sukkot or during Pesach? Okay, so Lord's table, that's not a phrase that I would, I know what he's talking about. You don't have to tell me, but I'm just saying it's not the way I would word it. It's not a phrase I would use, okay? Look, you're trying to get to things like communion or whether we're doing Kaddish and m.t.o.i or those kind of things, and they're calling it the Lord's table. It's not the Lord's table. If you're doing the Passover meal, it's the Passover meal, okay? If you're doing the breaking of bread and the drinking of wine, this is something that is done on a very regular basis. Yeshua used it as a teaching tool because they were the Jewish community at the time, and still today does it all the time, as a way to break bread and fellowship together. They would start off with wine and bread. And by the way, you gotta remember the staple, like the number one main thing of their diet was bread and wine. Okay, they didn't have refrigerators and they couldn't have juices and sodas and all this other stuff that we have for beverages. Okay, they had wine
They had water, and they had bread as their main staple, and then you would add other meats and vegetables to that as well, but it was always these two main things. And so you see Melchizedek and Avram doing this way back in Genesis. That's the first place you see it. So how often do we do this? As needed. By as needed, meaning you're breaking bread in fellowship. We do this every week at Shabbat before we eat our meal together, because it's a fellowship ritual. It's not communion. Matter of fact, every time we do it, I tell everybody, in case there's guests, this is not communion. Okay, the Catholic Church invented that concept, turned it into this crazy, very weird, pagan-sounding, bizarre thing that as you're eating this thing, it's becoming his body or his blood. That's pretty gross, all right? That's really sick, if you ask me. But he did say that when you do these things, this is a great teaching tool, because as a memory trigger, the wine, which is generally red wine, looks like blood. And the bread, he's the bread of life. So when you do these things, you're always being reminded about him. You're thinking about him, because you go, wow, bread of life, okay? Wine, his blood, which was shed for many. So these are things that he wanted us to have trigger in our thoughts when we would do this as often as we do it. We do it here whenever we get together. So Friday nights we do it, when we have our Torah study and we have meals together. When we break bread together, we do these things, okay? As part of a meal ceremony. But the Jews still do this kind of thing. When they have any kind of get together for a celebration, or as a group of people coming together, they'll do this, okay? And we call it Kaddish and m.t.o.i, okay? Next question.
m.t.o.i from someone in the congregation. When is it appropriate to do Mourner's Kaddish, and for how long?
Okay, so again, Mourner's Kaddish is a prayer that is a tradition to do. So it's not required to do. I guess if you're, considering yourself a Jew, or from especially an Orthodox Jew, you would think it's required. It's not required, okay? It's not a scripturally required thing. And the tradition, okay, as far as doing Mourner's Kaddish, is if you are mourning the loss of a loved one. That's as far as, who are you going to do this for, if someone's going to do this. And that means that somebody that you have a relationship with and you care deeply about, and you're mourning their loss. The tradition would be to do this for 11 months. Okay, not quite a year. It's got a lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into it necessarily. They've got their own bizarre thoughts about what happens to people when they die and where their soul goes and all this other stuff that's almost as crazy as some of the Catholic stuff, okay? But that's what the Mourner's Kaddish is about, okay? So it's just something, but it's for comforting those that are mourning a loss. So then afterwards, after those 11 months, the tradition is to do it once a year on the anniversary, the yahrzeit, the anniversary of their death, okay? And so that would be another tradition, again. So hopefully that answered the question. Again, it's all a tradition. So we offer it every week here at Shabbat so that people could have Kaddish recited for those that are mourning the loss, okay? So if you're going to do the tradition, 11 months, and then once a year on the anniversary. Okay, since we do it on Saturdays, it'll be the Saturday closest, I guess, to the anniversary. All right, next.
Okay, from blame everybody else but yourself. Rabbi, can you please expound on 1 John 5, 7, verses 7 and 8?
I like the name, blame everybody but yourself. That's good. All right, so in verse 7 and 8, so it says, because there are three who bear witness, the Spirit, the water, and the blood, and the three are in agreement. Okay, now, I believe, and I'd have to go back and look it up, I believe that these are verses that are reasonably understood to have been added, okay? And so these are things that when you look them up and you find the controversies regarding different things that have happened over the centuries, that this is a sort of a Trinitarian insert. But now if we were to look at three who bear witness, okay, so let's look at again, Spirit, water, and blood, okay? And they are in agreement. Let's go back. It says, this is the one that came by water and blood, Yeshua Messiah, not only by water, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit who bears witness because the Spirit is the truth. So they're saying that these three elements, not, as far as a Trinity thing, because the Trinity wouldn't be a spirit, a water, and a blood, okay? But the thing, because it wouldn't be like the Spirit would be like the Holy Ghost, and the blood, I guess, would be Yeshua, and the water would be the Father or something like that. I mean, there's nothing with that. But understand that when I did the teaching on baptism of fire, and I talked about baptism of water, baptism of fire, and baptism of Spirit, and that these are three elements of our growth that we go through. Water is for cleansing, okay? Water is for cleansing. Blood, without the shedding of blood, so to speak, there's no forgiveness of sin, so blood has to be a part of that. And of course, the Spirit is the intrinsic nature of something, okay? So, when we look at these things, he says, because there are three who bear witness, the Spirit, the water, and the blood, all bear witness that this is the Messiah. He did go and get mikvah appropriately. He also provides, if you drink from me, I provide the waters of life. He did shed his blood, okay? And he, in essence himself, is that Spirit of truth. And so, there's lots of ways you can look at this verse, but I believe there are elements of this verse that were inserted, okay? Next. And I'm not just saying because I believe it. I believe I've read that that's a very common understanding, okay?
From Adonai's kids, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. I was wondering if you could give me some clarity here. What is the need and reason of the sanctification for children and spouses, referring to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 14?
I'm just trying to make sure I have the whole context that's going on in here. This would probably be a good thing for me to also add into the roles of men and women teaching, which I probably will. I think it's actually in the verses I'm going to be covering. Okay, so it's dealing with marriage and divorce, okay, or the idea of separating. And so let's make sure that we are clear on what the issues are here. Let's see. Let the husband render to his wife what is her due, and likewise also the wife to her husband. That's verse 3. Then it's talking about, so they're having a problem with having their sex life be okay. Okay, apparently they're withholding from each other, etc. The wife doesn't have authority over her own body, but the husband does, and likewise the husband doesn't have authority over his body. The wife does. Do not deprive one another except with agreement for a time to give yourselves to fasting or prayer, but come together again so that Satan does not try you because of your lack of self-control. So part of this was the idea of, if you don't come together with each other, you may be tempted to come together with somebody else. All right? Because it starts off with, and concerning the matters you wrote to me, it is good. Is it good for a man? It's good for a man not to touch a woman, but because of whoring, let each one have his own wife. In other words, we were designed with sexual desire. Let's just be honest and blunt. He made us to want to reproduce. And we don't reproduce without sex, and sex we wouldn't do to reproduce unless it was something desirable to do. So we're drawn to it. We desire it, right? He's saying, look, but if you don't, and by the way, this is a big reason why men cheat, women cheat, because the bedroom is barren. There ain't nothing happening there, okay? I'm serious. If you're not having intimacy on any kind of regular basis, your marriage is probably headed into problems at some point, unless it's by agreement, when you just both are no longer interested in it as much as you were maybe earlier. But if it's not by agreement, you have a problem. Well, but I don't really want to do that as much as she does or he does. Well, then do it anyway, because that's part of what you need to do, because they need that. There's lots of things, by the way, that a husband or wife does that they really don't want to do. But they do it for the other person. Ladies, trust me, if you're the one that's not really wanting it as much as he does tons of things he really doesn't want to do, but he does them for you. All you ladies who think that you were born with the right to stay home and do nothing and raise your children while the husband goes out and kills himself till he dies. I'm not against that idea, by the way, but he expects to come home and be taken care of. And I don't mean just sexually, but he expects to be taken care of. Well, I don't feel like it. Look, some ladies will go, well, I don't always feel like it. Do you think the man wants to go to work every day? Do you think he wants to fix the car every day and take care of everything that's broken every day and all the things you expect a man to do every day? Do you think he wants to do all that all the time? No. Well, I don't always feel like it. Well, so what? What does that have to do with anything? Maybe it's the other way around, same thing. we all have our needs and our desires, and it's part of the glue that keeps us tight and together, all right? Now, I'm not saying men or women impose yourselves. It should be by agreement. So if you're having a problem, you need to sit down and talk about how to fix it, come up with a solution. You don't demand. That will cause a bigger disaster than just not having it in the first place. Don't impose yourself. You do not want a sex partner who you're making do it. That will lead to you having no partner, all right? But if they're not interested, then you need to sit down and figure out how to fix that problem, where they're doing it because they want to, even if they don't really want to, but they're doing it for you as something they're doing for you, knowing full well that they are also getting for you things you don't really want to do, but you're doing them anyway. Okay, let's just make sure we're clear about that. So then we're going down further in the chapter here. So we say, I say this as a concession, not as a command, all right? For I wish that all men were even as I myself, but each one has his own gift from Elohim, etc. So he said, because he's unmarried. And I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for you to stay that way even as I am. Okay, but if they don't have the self-control, let them marry. Self-control meaning you're going to have that desire drive you crazy unless you have an outlet for it. So get married. But don't just get married to anybody. Find somebody that you are in sync with to have a relationship with so that you are coming together and filling into a congruent sort of thing, right? Because you're not just going to come together for the physical stuff because 99% of the time you're not doing that. I don't care how often you're doing it, it's still only a brief amount of time. Even if it's every day, you still have so much more of your day not doing those things. You have to get along. You have to be heading in the same direction. You have to be of one mind and purpose. You have to be a team, right? Now, let's see. And to the married I command, not I, but the master, a wife should not separate from her husband. But if she is indeed separated, let her remain unmarried, or to be restored to favor with her husband, and let a husband not send away a wife. That's the ideal goal here, is to try to make things work, to fix things. Now, he says, and to the rest I say, not the master now, this is Paul talking. If any brother has an unbelieving wife, and she thinks well to live with him, let him not send her away. Look, if you have an unbelief, in other words, you weren't in this walk together to start with, and then one of you came into the walk and the other didn't, and they're willing to stay with you, and they're fine with that, and they're going to act in a reasonably accommodating manner, then do it. Stay that way. All right? And to the rest I say, then it says, and a woman who has an unbelieving husband, and he thinks well to live with her, the same thing. Just because you're not on the same page, unless it's actually functionally a problem, there's no reason to separate. That doesn't make it ideal. It just means if it's not a problem. By a problem, what's a problem anyway? The person is making it almost impossible for you to observe and keep. And the relentless attacks on what you're doing, the relentless interference with what you're trying to do. As opposed to saying, look, you do it, just don't involve me, I'm good letting you do it. That person you should stay with. Now we get to 14. For the unbelieving husband has been set apart in the wife, and the unbelieving wife has been set apart in the husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, and now they are set apart. Okay, so he's saying is this. There's an element that's going on that the set apartness has been brought into your household, either the wife or the husband. Okay? Which means now what you do is going to be seen by your children. And he's saying, look, otherwise your children would be unclean. From the idea of like, if you're not going to stay together, Paul's addressing a very specific situation here. I'm trying to make sure I understand what he's addressing, okay? He's trying to help people understand that this has to do with separating or not separating. It's not about being set apart just because one or the other is this or that, but it's saying, look, if you stay together, remember he said to the unbelieving wife and the unbelieving husband, if your husband or wife is willing to stay with you, and they're willing to allow for all these things, then stay, right? Now, if the unbelieving husband has been set apart in the wife, and the unbelieving wife has been set apart in the husband, this is about staying together, okay? Otherwise your children will be unclean, but now they are set apart. I don't have any idea what that means. Why would you use the word unclean? Okay, this is Paul writing. I can't answer this for you, okay? You got to understand something about Paul's writings. I say this often. Paul is writing, in this case, two different things. Number one, Paul is writing his own opinion. In this case, okay? He literally says, it's not from the master, this is my opinion. Okay, so he's actually straight out says, it's only my opinion. Number two, he is addressing a very specific situation in a congregation, which we don't really know what it is, because we're only reading his response. We don't have the letter that was sent to him first, or the person that came to him and told him what was going on, and he's writing a letter in response. So I have no idea what he's talking about here, saying about this verse 14. I really don't know what to do with that. I understand all the verses up to that point, okay? But I don't understand this idea about being set apart and with the unclean children. I can't answer that for you. I took the context of it, and I really don't have a good answer for you. So that's just going to have to suffice. Paul understood, and so did the people he wrote to. All right. It is now after 5:30, so hopefully that's all for you over there on live stream. All right, excellent, zone one.